रहे हैं, अभी क्यों ला रहे हैं, अभी क्यों ला रहे हैं? आपको किसने रोका था 10 में कार्रवाई नहीं करने के लिए?
On the debate tonight, the big 10% quota debate rages on. After the Lok Sabha passage, the centre's 124th Amendment Constitution Bill faces the Rajya Sabha test.
अरे समर्थन करना है तो खुल के करो भाई, इसमें क्या दिक्कत है? आराम से खुल के करो। तो आज तो बदलाव का दिन है, इतिहास का दिन है, तो इतिहास बना रहे हैं तो समर्थन करिए, तो खुल के करिए।
The bill as amended is passed by the requisite majority in accordance with the provisions of Article 368 of the Constitution.
While the centre's quota bill easily passed the Lok Sabha hurdle with a near unanimous vote, in the Rajya Sabha, the centre was cornered by the opposition, who called it premature and an election gimmick.
This country jobs. If this country is reducing jobs, then this reservation is impacting whom? Who are you doing it for? When the youth come out on the roads, they want jobs. And jobs will only come with economic growth.
उनको वो भी आरक्षण दिया और उनको।
As India debates the new quota, Mirror now asks, what is the problem this bill is attempting to address? What happens to states that have exceeded the 50% cap already?
You're watching the Urban Debate on Mirror now. Faye D'Souza, thank you for joining us. There are some big questions we have to ask. A very simple question. We've been asking them actually for the last 24 hours. People in Parliament have been asking the questions. No answers have been offered. And really, as citizens of this country, what we should find particularly disturbing is that Parliament has supported the bill, passed it in Lok Sabha, is likely to pass it in Rajya Sabha as we speak, without getting answers to any of these questions. So really, what is the motivation or motive behind what the decisions our parliamentarians make? So basically, they're voting at this point without having any of their questions answered, keeping nothing but elections in mind. None of them have stopped to say we will not vote or we will not support if you don't answer the questions. Here are the questions that ought to be answered. First of all, what is the problem that the government is attempting to solve with this reservation of this bill? Are you looking to solve for poverty? Are you looking to solve for the job crisis? Are you looking to solve, for example, representation in government offices and colleges? What problem are you attempting to solve? First question. Second question. How many jobs or seats will be available under this quota across the country? Third question, how many candidates will be eligible for reservation under this category across the country? And finally, what happens in states that have already exceeded their 50% cap, like Tamil Nadu, that has currently a 69% reservation? With this 10%, will it become 79%? Questions that have not been answered in Parliament, and we hope that we'll be able to find answers for them. If we don't, then we have to really question our parliamentarians, each and every one of them, except the 4 in Lok Sabha who voted against because their questions have not been answered. Joining me on the show today, Zafar Islam for the BJP, Adil Singh for the Congress, Karuna Nandi will join us as well, Radhika Ramsesan, consulting editor of the Business Standard. We'll have Geeta Luthra join us in a bit. Kovai Satyan for the AIDMK and Akash Jindal, who's a senior economist. Mr. Jindal, I understand you wanted to make the opening statement today. So I'm going to come first to you because I do acknowledge we didn't give you enough time last night. I have questions that I'd hope Mr. Zafar Islam would answer for us. But in the meantime, what is your opening statement?
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity. Now, what I want to understand both from BJP and Congress is, sir, I want to make a statement. I, Akash Jindal, am a great sinner in this country. Why so? Because I am the general category upper income person who would be away from all the reservations. Now, I commit many sins, sir. Sin number 1, I, Akash Jindal, pay decent amount of income tax. Sin number 2, I, Akash Jindal, pay decent amount of GST. Sin number 3, I, Akash Jindal, pay decent amount of property tax, property transaction tax, and many other taxes. Now, my sons would have lesser opportunity of getting into a postgraduate degree college. So now what happens is, there's a famous Amitabh Bachchan movie dialogue Diwar, which all of us have seen. मेरे गुनाहों की सजा मेरी माँ को मत दो. Sir, with folded hands, I want to ask this question just because Akash Jindal is a great sinner. He has been paying lots of taxes, and he was told once upon a time that paying lots of taxes means he's contributing to the development and growth of this country. Now, I'm asking you, sir, with folded hands, I'm asking you, मेरे गुनाहों की सजा मेरे बच्चों को क्यों दे रहे हो? उनके लिए opportunities. Why are you reducing opportunities?
Why are you reducing opportunities?
I don't have anything against the EWS brothers. I am asking increase the jobs. I am asking increase the seats in the colleges rather than taking from one category and giving it to another category. Why can't you pass a resolution of increasing college seats? Why can't you pass a resolution for increasing jobs? With faith, self-hustle, I have done many shows on the job opportunities, how job opportunities could be increased. But why? What I'm asking is, please increase job opportunities.
Let's increase opportunities instead of dividing.
So then perhaps the reservation systems would not be that much required.
Okay. Let me get answers to your questions.
Please give me an answer, sir.
All right. Mr. Islam, good evening. Welcome to the debate. I have 4 questions for you, but do you want to address Mr. Jindal's question first?
Thank you, Faye and Mr. Akash Jindal. Let me start with that. I'm happy, and probably the entire nation will be happy to see you a privileged person within your own country who has the ability to pay taxes, who has the ability to pay GST, who has the ability to take care of all expenses, and who has the ability to safeguard your own interests, and who has the ability to do charity, and you also can be seen as a person who has all the luxury of life, whatever you explained to him. But when you just look around you, Mr. Jindal, when you look around you, you will always find there are people who are less privileged. There are people who are underprivileged. There are people who has nothing, have nots. And the government's responsibility as a
necessity called education, sir. I'm talking of a necessity called education. Education is not a luxury. Now my kids would be deprived of this necessity called education, sir. Please
let me just complete. I didn't interrupt, Mr. Jindal. You can ask me later.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Islam.
No, he is not answering my question.
Yes. Let me redirect it. I understood what you're saying, Mr. Jindal. I understood what you're saying.
I'll answer.
There aren't enough seats,
you do not want to listen.
Mr. Islam. Shouldn't we have added more seats? I think that's the question he's asking.
So let me just complete. So it is the responsibility of it's a democratic country. It's the responsibility of the state to bring welfare for its stakeholders. And who are the stakeholders? Citizens of this country are the stakeholders. So it is the welfare state. And what is the responsibility of the welfare state? To bring economic and social justice. Unfortunately, this has been denied. And I'm repeating it, this has been denied purely because it is not only, this outstanding demand has not come up today. It has been in public domain. Repeatedly, people who are not part of this existing reservation
Mr.
quota,
Islam, do you know how many universities this government has added in the country?
Affirmative action, which Constitution provides that affirmative action should be done by the government, is being done here. So let me just complete.
Do you know how many universities has been added in the tenure of this government? How many universities have you inaugurated, and how many of them have actually opened their doors?
See, Faye,
yes.
The government has already made a statement that while we are giving making a reservation of 10%, but the 10% seats will also be enhanced. I mean, we will create additional capacity.
Shouldn't you have done so already?
In all the institutions, so that even though the 10% reservation is being given, that additional capacity will also be created.
When?
Let me also tell you one thing. You don't have to be very critical about it, purely because it is only safeguarding the interests of
Mr. Islam, I disagree with you. I have to be very critical about it because it's my job to be critical.
So, no, the government's responsibility is not only to safeguard the taxpayers. Government responsibility to ensure that taxpayers'
and the
interests
Constitution,
are safeguarded. But the tax what they are paying is also used to safeguard the interests of less privileged.
Okay, I know the answers to the questions. 1 second, Zafar Islam, let me answer that question. There has been an increase in three central universities under the NDA, a decrease of 3 deemed universities which have been closed, and a decrease of 1 aided deemed university in the last 4 years. The questions again that we're going to come back to, and I'll give you time with these questions, Mr. Islam.
But it's not only the government. No. Faye, it is not only the government-owned institution or the government-supported institution, any institution which
so
is
you've created
recognized by
reservation in
CBSE,
institutions that you had no hand in building, but you haven't built any of your own. How is that a good argument to put forward today?
Faye, let me clarify. This reservation, let me clarify, please. This reservation which has been proposed is not only meant for the government institution. Any private institution as well, which has been recognized by CBSE or UGC or XYZ, the competent authority, it is recognized by them, then yes, they will have to offer.
So what you have done effectively, Zafar Islam, is the really expensive private universities that Akash Jindal's kids would have gone to. You've made those competitive as well because he would have paid to get his kids into those universities. But now there are reservations there also. Let me point out to you, in the IITs, for example, of the 54 seats reserved for students belonging to the scheduled tribes, only 7 of those seats were filled. 12%. The rest were empty. In the new IITs have done slightly better. SC students with 89 of the 108 slots have been filled. OBC quota is full across IITs. So the questions that I do hope that you would answer for us is what problems are the government solving? What is the data specifically of the number of seats available and the number of candidates who will apply? And what happens in states with more than 50% quota already? I will come back to you with those answers. Radhika Ramsesan, to say that don't be critical, and this is something we've heard now for 24 hours, don't be critical. It's our job to be critical. But I'm worried, Radhika ji, about the fact that in the next hour or so, this might pass through Rajya Sabha as well.
It is going to pass through Rajya Sabha. I mean, in the first half of today, there was some noise, but it didn't really amount to pandemonium. And I think the sort of opposition later figured out that there's no point resisting or stalling the House. It's better to cooperate and have the bill passed. And if you see the tone and tenor of the speeches, they're all largely supportive. A few anodyne questions have been asked. You know, they were not really very sharp questions. I mean, of the kind that you are raising. No. So they are questions which the government can easily field when the minister replies. So the point is that the government has definitely put the cart before the horse, because as your statistics clearly point out, you're going to make private colleges, private universities competitive. B, you are not going to increase the number of seats in government institutions. So what happens to the additional quota that you are creating? And unlike the SC and ST quota, this quota will be filled. I'm very sure about that. So you're going to have a lot of jostling for admissions, and it's going to create a lot of problems. I don't think the government has thought through, because if you speak privately to BJP MPs and members, they are quite candid. They tell you that the objective was to offset the negative effect among the upper castes in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan. They are quite blunt about it. They think they have done it. Now we really have to see how it pans on the ground, but the logistics, I don't think the government has thought through. Data, I really wonder how much of it the government has got. The whole thing has been done in a hurry, and I mean, I wouldn't call it disastrous. I mean, it's a bit hasty to pronounce any kind of judgment, but there are going to be issues galore.
Well, the debate still continues in Rajya Sabha as we speak. Kawai Satyan, for the AIADMK, what is the AIADMK's official stand right now? will they be voting for the bill in Rajya Sabha?
That call will be taken by the High Command. High Command is in discussion on the same. But it is so unfortunate where we live in a land of right to education. We still talk about having special reservations on percentage on different categories and walks of life of people to get that education. Rather than having a holistic approach, we feel that the BJP suddenly wants to jump to the 100th step of the ladder rather than going by the first step and the second step. And if and jobs for a certain set of category based on economic criteria, you understand that the entire socio-economic class and classification was to give equal opportunity for everybody, and which is prevalent among in majority of the states. For example, a state like Tamil Nadu, wherein we have 69% of reservations, not hampering or not snatching away the opportunity of others. Still, the state had excelled in all parameters in education, higher educations, and shown the world and India that the per capita income can be risen through it in a holistic approach. Now, if the government really wants to push this through, there are a political angle to it, and I would understand now BJP started the appeasement politics after probably their downfall in the latest elections. Now they are also into the mode of jo dikta hai wo bikta hai modus, that kind of a slang. Now, state are the stakeholders, and whatever changes you want to bring into the nation, we urge the central government. You have all the liberty to chest beat and say, yes, this is a revolutionary step, there is a historic moment for India, everything is fine. We are the stakeholders. We have emulated certain model and proven it successful. We have not disturbed the social structure or the social fabric, and we have protected the rights of the people through these reservations, in recent years. Over a period of decades, we have demonstrated this. And what is stopping from the BJP to take into account of the stakeholders? And why don't you appreciate that the stakeholders who probably are from a different government and doing a different governance will be able to give you valid inputs on it? Well, and why are you not open to it? Why do you want to do everything in the 11th hour and trying to justify whatever you do is right?
Absolutely. Adil Singh Boparai of the Congress, is the Congress supporting the bill on the floor?
Each and every action of
one second, sorry. Adil, just one second. Adil, is the Congress supporting? Is the Congress supporting the bill on the floor?
Well, Faye, the Congress party is supportive of affirmative action for the economically weaker sections of society, provided the existing reservation scheme for the SCs, STs and other backward classes is not tinkered, and at the same time the government works towards enhancing opportunities, whether it's in the arena of jobs or education, like pointed out by some of the previous panelists. But I think what is indeed intriguing in this entire saga is the timing. 4 years, 10 months, 2 days before the session
Adilji, forgive me for interrupting you. I just want a piece of clarification before you move forward. In the Lok Sabha last night, didn't the Congress vote to pass the bill? Now, the Congress members of your party have been asking very valid questions on the floor yesterday and today, but you voted to pass the bill without receiving adequate answers to the questions you asked. Or did you receive adequate answers? I don't know. What motive does the party have to pass a bill that you're not satisfied with?
Well, let's be very clear. Faye. The Congress party has always been supportive of such initiatives. Our assemblies in Haryana, our assemblies in Maharashtra,
your members believe it's unconstitutional,
have come out with such legislation where we provide employment.
You believe it's unconstitutional, but you passed it anyway.
Affirmative action for the weaker section, but it has
so you'll pass anything that says affirmative action on it?
Well, please
is that how Parliament is supposed to function? Is that why we choose our representatives?
Give me 30 seconds.
Go on.
Give me 30 seconds. Affirmative action which is based on data, which is based on homework, which is based on intelligible differentia, and which is capable of passing legal scrutiny. Let's be very clear. This is a knee-jerk reaction of Mr. Modi, and I'm not sure if they've done the necessary homework to really see it through. Let's be very clear. There are legal hurdles and the government will have to address, and we sincerely hope that the government is mindful of these legal hurdles. Mr. Modi talks about jobs. They're talking about reservation.
Why did you pass
Where are the jobs? Mr. Gadkari has very candidly admitted that India has no jobs. Unemployment rate today stands at 7.3%. Demonetization
So
wrecked
why
our
did
economy.
you pass it?
The CMIE studies and surveys says that more than 1 crore jobs were lost in the previous year. So this is nothing but a political gimmick. But principally,
So between the BJP and the Congress, you are playing politics with the Constitution of India. This is the level of seriousness that both these parties place on the Constitution of our country. Let me read out to you the arguments made by both Mr. Sibal and Mr. Shashi Tharoor of the Congress party. What is the purpose of this bill? Where is the data? Why did the parliamentarians clear this bill without any answers? What happens when the states where the quota is above 50%? This is not, to bring in economically weaker sections is constitutionally invalid. The reservation provided for weaker sections is invalid and will not stand scrutiny in a court of law. 1 second. It is unconstitutional under as per a 9-judge bench. The Indira Sahani judgment, it goes on, and still you voted for it. I want to understand from the Congress party, Adil Boparai, what are our parliamentarians for? If you are going to make choices and if you are going to vote when you clearly believe this is not good for the country. Why did the Congress party pass this bill as the chief opposition if you disagree with it?
We are supportive of reservations for the economically weaker sections of society. This is on a principle level. But as an opposition, we've certainly flagged issues because to us this appears to be a political gimmick by Mr. Modi.
No. So you said yesterday that you wanted the bill referred to a joint parliamentary committee or a select committee. Why didn't you hold off to vote until after it was referred to a committee?
In the universities. Well, the BJP government is unresponsive. We flagged these issues. It's incumbent on them.
So hang on. So explain to me. Maybe my political science is not very good. Adil, you're the politician. I am not. Explain this to me. So basically, this is what the opposition does. You go into Parliament, you flag issues during the debate, and then you just vote whichever way the government tells you to vote. Is that how the opposition works? Is that how Parliament is supposed to work? You'll vote in and you'll pass anything the government places before you.
Well, Faye, as an opposition party, it is our duty to flag issues. But principally, I again repeat, we support the initiative of providing reservation. This is something which has been our brainchild in the past. We initiated it in some measure in several states where we'd ruled. But this government, I again come to the most critical point. Where are the jobs?
Don't ask me, I'm not the government.
Destroyed our economy. And you asked a very pointed question. How many universities have been established by this government in the past 4.5 years?
And so we will ask this question because our parliamentarians lack the spine to do so. I want to take this back to Radhika ji. Radhika ji, this is what I'm talking about. It's a complete breakdown of parliamentary democracy when no one in parliament had the spine to stand up to this government.
Absolutely. Who asked the Congress to play ball with the government? Let me take you to the women's reservation bill that also entails a constitutional amendment. Recall the number of times that piece of proposed legislation has been subject to scrutiny by parliamentary committees, interminable discussions, dissent, and what have you. I think it was once passed in the Rajya Sabha after certain members were marshalled out because they were creating a lot of pandemonium. And since then, it's been lying in cold storage. Okay, now the Congress and the opposition, they've raised certain points about the women's reservation bill, and in the fitness of things, it has been subject to discussion, to debate, and a certain cooling off period was given in each time the bill came up. Triple talaq. That again the Congress told it in the Rajya Sabha where it can block a bill. Therefore, I am surprised today when the at the alacrity with which the Congress supported this piece of legislation. What was the compelling need? I mean, Mr. Adil Singh has flagged a lot of issues, is asking questions, but what happened, inside the House? What is the compulsion except politics? I mean, they don't want to be seen outpaced by the BJP on this whole issue of pleasing the upper caste and the intermediate caste. That is absolutely the rock bottom of the issue.
Karuna Nandi, senior advocate with the Supreme Court, there seems to be a general consensus in the legal fraternity that this bill will not stand scrutiny in a court of law. I'm personally disappointed that our parliamentarians, who also happen to be lawyers, voted for the bill even after raising the point. But I want to understand your legal opinion on whether this bill holds water.
Well, there's a 9-judge bench, Indira Soni, that decided in the Indira Soni judgment that economic criterion is not sufficient to reserve jobs and, educational seats for. So, unless there is a particular sort of sea change in the circumstances of the country, right, which is not something that has been demonstrated, if anything, by and large, we are probably better off as a nation than we were at the time. Now, the reason that this entire thing is ludicrous, and I hope that at some, fiction can't be written as satirical as this particular story of this particular bill, because the reservation here is not for the poor. The reservation is for the upper middle class. Who are the people who own 8 lakhs and below? People who earn 66,000 rupees per month. 66,000 rupees. You are trying to reserve seats, you're trying to reserve jobs for people who are upper middle class? 10%? Now, this is also, according to NABARD data, about 99% of the country. So 1% of the country is left who does not have reserved seats. So now, what do we have here? We have the upper middle class who would otherwise, and this upper middle class and below, who would otherwise be entitled to, say, 51% of the seats, right, are now being told that, no, you have 10% of the seats reserved to you. So the entire thing is just laughable. And forget constitutional scrutiny. Why are the Congress and other opposition parties not calling this out? I just think that generally it shows a deep disrespect for the voter. The voter who is unemployed, the voter who is seeing that no jobs have been created, that the population growth has been greater than the level of creation of jobs, and therefore you have the sort of level of unemployment that is just so disastrous, and that there is a sort of attempt to redirect anger from Mr. Modi and the government to the people amongst themselves, and so that you have people fighting it out for a tiny portion of the pie because the government and Mr. Modi have failed to fulfill their promises and failed to do their job. Now, for that and for this ridiculous upper middle class reservation, they are upper middle class, upper caste, because let us also not forget this point of principle, that reservation has been in the past, and something I very much support, to address the historical discrimination against Dalits and against OBCs, right? Now you have the Justice Rohini Commission that has kept us, the four extensions have been asked by the Justice Rohini Commission looking at reservations for OBCs. So they're absolutely not serious about that. So this ridiculous political move that seems to be sailing through Parliament because nobody can seem to find the spine except for the DMK, may I point out, to stand up to it and just ask the very obvious questions, presuming that the voter is stupid,
Yes.
And that, I think, that is the deepest disrespect here, saying that you sit there unemployed and, we are going to pull wool over your eyes while you sit there starving without any money, and basically you all should, sort of cast stones at each other rather than expecting us to do what we're supposed to do, which is create jobs. So the whole thing is just ridiculous and deeply disappointing. And upper class, upper middle, upper caste people don't need reservations. They need jobs. They need more jobs. Yes. It's like saying that adage about teaching a man how to fish or giving him a fish. Here's a fish that he. Here's a dead fish that he had already, and you're basically giving it back to him.
Well, let me now. I've given Zafar Islam enough time. Yes, Ms. Nandi, I've given Zafar Islam enough time, and now I'm going to ask the question. Zafar Islam ji, if you would help us, please, with the answers to this question. Question number 1: What is the problem that the government is attempting to solve with the introduction of this bill? Are you looking to solve unemployment? Are you looking to solve for poverty? Are you looking to solve for representation in government offices and in higher education? What is the problem that the government is hoping to solve?
Let me respond to that. See, it is not that the first time where this has been discussed. This is a long outstanding demand where the people who have not been given any reservation, part of that, the quota we have, reserve quota we have, they are not part of that. Those people, and particularly I'm talking about the weaker section from that pool, they have been asking for affirmative action, reservation for long. And Congress, even though they have discussed, they always look passionate.
Mr. Islam, what is the problem that you are looking to solve with this bill?
Did give them some comfort in terms of giving them
No. Giving comfort is not a responsibility of the government. Poverty, unemployment, or representation. What are you solving for?
You interrupt me, then you will. If you will. You didn't interrupt others, but you always interrupt. The moment I start,
because you're not answering the question I'm asking you, Mr. Islam.
Then I will. Like I listen to your question, you will have to listen to my answer as well.
I'll allow the audience to decide whether or not this is the answer to my question.
I will respond the way I will. I will not respond the way you want me to respond.
Go on.
No, you can't expect me. Dictate me that I should respond only the way you want. I will respond the way I want because I represent a political party, not your channel where I have to speak the way you want. All I'm saying that you question you have posed. Let me respond to you, please.
It's about answering her question.
I am saying that this has been a long outstanding demand which has not been met. This has not been met. You feel that what is the purpose? Purpose is the twin purpose. First, as you rightly pointed out, that there is a representation which they feel that they have been denied, even though they are poor in the same country, and the system does not allow them to go up in the ladder purely because there is no mechanism have been put in place to safeguard their interests. So there is an affirmative action which is needed to be in place, and that is what the government has initiated. That is the first priority, so that their representation
really
both in educational institution. That's why the amendment in Article 15 and in Article 16, amendment in Article 16 to show that they get a job. Now you are talking about the second question which you raised in terms of job creation. You must understand, the government alone, and I have spoken on your channel earlier also, cannot create job for every citizen of this country. The government job is not as much.
How many
government
jobs?
Can facilitate, government can create environment where the jobs can be created.
No, my question is not create jobs. My question is, out of the jobs that will be available in this 10% bracket, do you know how many jobs will be available? The president of the BJP yesterday said crores and crores of youth will find justice. Do you have crores and crores of jobs in government? 10% of the government jobs that will be made available, how many are those?
Let me. You are fixated about one particular question. Let me respond to that first, so that you at least feel that your question has been responded.
That is the most relevant question.
There are two. It's not only job. It's not only job. It is the representation or reservation in educational institution as well. So if they get a quality education, they will not only find a job in government, but government has a limitation in terms of how many jobs government can create. But if they are well educated, then they can get job elsewhere as well, not only necessarily in government, but in government job, whatever is the government job, there they will have representation as well, which otherwise was not there. They were not catching up with for those weaker section. The problem you have to understand, they cannot compete with the upper class and who are affluent. They cannot compete with them. Then there is a reservation system. They cannot compete with them. Where will they go?
Well, I'll tell you where they'll go, Mr. Islam. Your description of what is weaker section, your description of what is weaker section is someone who pays income tax every year. The income tax bracket ends at 2.5 lakh rupees, and your description of weaker section and poor reading reservation ends at 8 lakh rupees. So really, I think that the government should now revise the income tax bracket as well to 8 lakh rupees, because if these people are defined as poor, let's not tax them. You're burdening these people who cannot climb up the ladder. Is this the next step the government is going to take to increase the income tax basic bracket to 8 lakh rupees? Akash Jindal, go ahead, please.
Yeah. My dear friend Jafar Islam is saying that job was to create an environment which could generate jobs. Now, I as an economist track the economy on a daily basis. I have all the data to debate. Please tell me, because of the atmosphere and environment you have created, you are referring to the private sector, how many jobs have been created in the private sector in the past 4.5 years because of the environment and atmosphere you have created? I have entire data, and on jobs, I have done so many shows. I can give you the entire data. Secondly, now one confusion which may perhaps be created is, now, the income criteria, just allow me to complete, sir. I never interrupted you. Please allow me to complete my question. About the income criteria, whatever it is, 8 lakh in the center or states, it may differ. Who would certify how much is my income? Now, if you take the income tax return thing, I am the author of my income tax return. Nobody is certifying in income tax return that this much is my income. So, please tell me which body would authenticate that this much is my income. Only 3 or 4% people file income tax return. There also, I am the author of my return. So I am telling this much is my income. So there is nobody certifying. It's a self-assessment. And in other cases, who would be the authority who would certify that this is this person's income, and because of this income, he is eligible to be in that quota?
Yes.
Wouldn't this thing create a lot of confusion? Have you come up with the answer for that?
Yes, we also have Geeta Luthra, who's joined us now, senior advocate with the Supreme Court. Ms. Luthra, good evening, and thank you for joining us. 1 second, Mr. Satyam, I'll come to you. Geeta Luthra first. Ms. Luthra,
good evening.
Various members of the opposition have raised questions in Parliament yesterday and today, but they continue to support the bill and they continue to vote for it. To me, as a citizen who votes on a regular basis, this is a breakdown of parliamentary democracy, because if there are parliamentarians who believe this bill will not stand scrutiny, it is unconstitutional, it goes against the Supreme Court judgment, it doesn't have enough data, it hasn't had enough discussion, why are they voting for it? Should we as citizens be offended and disappointed tonight?
I don't know. We as citizens have to be very disappointed. This is unfortunate. You know, when the rest of the world, and if you look at statistics, even say countries like France, maybe it's not the best example, but it's a good example. Countries like the US are all going towards merit as the more important criteria. So more and more you'll see the judgments somehow restricting reservation, even though there is a great talk of doing reservation, doing affirmative action. In actual practice, they stretch it to an extent because they know that merit is important for the progress of a country. Second, they do not want divisiveness. So we, from a country which was very united, very together, are becoming more and more divisive because parliamentarians think that the more division they create, the more votes we'll get. Now, this is what is sad. So while they may personally agree, they don't have the gumption that it's not a good idea to have reservation beyond 50%. Maharashtra may have led the way in, getting reservation for Marathas, bringing it beyond 50%. Maybe one other state, Tamil Nadu or somewhere where this was also the case. But the fact is, this will not pass constitutional muster in the courts. So just because stays have not been granted doesn't mean it's not bad law and will not stand muster. So the question is, knowing all this, Our parliamentarians who should be responsible, some of who have the best legal minds in the country, should be the ones who should stand up and say, let's work this out. We have to, in fact, look at reducing reservations over a period of time. When Constitution was enacted, they said, in the first instance, if I recall correctly, let's have it for 20 years and let's see further. And then you have Mandal and Indira Sani which say, okay. And also Balaji in 1964 saying, okay, up to 50% is fine. But it doesn't mean that you have to bring it to the tip of 50%. And you can't go over the tip. So the question is, it's a very sad day. It's unfortunate. Everybody should sit up. This is not why we are going to vote for people in parliament. We are going to vote for them if they are responsible and they want the country to do well and to progress, and not because they feel that if all of them say aye to reservation for upper castes, then or upper classes on criteria which is only based on economic criteria. And Indira Sani in a couple of places, I think Justice Jeevan Reddy's judgment says it should not be only economic criteria, it should be social and economic criteria. Now, criteria which has, 90% of the people in that is not going to pass muster. So let's look as responsible citizens and let's hope our parliamentarians look at it, debate it properly with not looking at the vote bank. I for one would be very happy.
Well, we'll know in a little while, Geeta Luthra, because we understand that Rajya Sabha is likely to vote and we'll go across to it when it does happen. But given the track record, and since everyone who's spoken for the last 24 hours, since yesterday actually, more than 24 hours, has either started off or ended by saying this party supports the bill, to make it very clear that they're keeping their vote banks and sacrificing democracy. I also hope we move into a system like the West where we understand and we know every single parliamentarian and which way they voted. So you can decide whether that parliamentarian has thought of you or thought of his own personal gain and politics or her own personal gain and politics when voting. Mr. Kovai Satyan, how many AIADMK votes went for this bill yesterday?
Where? Lok Sabha?
Yes.
No, I think the member are on suspension, right?
So the AIADMK, I understand, walked out, Mr. Satya.
We don't have anybody who is representing.
Mr. Satya, the AIADMK walked out right before voting yesterday. Why?
We abstained from voting.
Why?
We abstained. We abstained from voting.
Why?
See, that's what I made a point in the beginning, that when you have stakeholders who have demonstrated a better methodology of implementing a certain set of these kinds of initiatives, and you should have given the equal opportunity to the stakeholders and understand how the societal fabric and the societal rights are being established.
Very good. Mr. Satyan, I understand, forgive me, if my political science is weak, if you disagree, then you could have voted no. But when you walk out, you bring down the total number of voters or parliamentarians in Lok Sabha, and that allows the bill to pass even more easily than it would have if you sat in and voted no. Why did the AIADMK allow the bill to pass and walk out instead of voting?
Faiz, let's understand. If the idea per se is against the Constitution, it is not going to do any benefit, then yes, what you say is right. But if the idea is in the idea stage itself, where it has not given any scope to move forward for discussions, then yes, it's better to abstain from voting. All we are saying is you have brought in a proposal which you say that it will benefit the economically backward in the general category. Now, if you had given me the number saying that what is the percentage of people who are going to be benefit out of this, and according to you, what is that classification that you have arrived at, and what is the number you are looking at, yes, it makes more sense, it gives more clarity. While there are economically backward in the general category, we admit that there are people who are economically weak. But at the same time, what is the methodology that you have used to arrive at it? For example, I can quote you an example. That's what I want to make a point earlier. For example, Arjun Sengupta committee, when it was appointed in April 2009, had a different version of saying that people live in less than 20 rupees per day. There are 77% of India population. Within 5 months of a frame time, you have Suresh Tendulkar committee who used a different methodology to compute the economic status of the people living in rural India and urban India.
Okay,
So
let me just run this
like,
by Radhika ji. Radhika Ramsesan,
when you want to
consulting
propose
editor of
something-
Business Standard, political expert. Radhika ji, is it true that, do you agree with what Mr. Satyam is saying? Because I believe that when a political party walks out just before voting, they're doing so to make it easier for the government to pass the bill. If they actually had problems with this bill, they could have stayed back and they could have abstained, or they could have voted no.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me also add that this is not the first time that the AIDMK is in cahoots with the government. Time and again, when the government was in a tricky situation, the AIDMK has bailed it out with a walkout. Now, Mr. Satyam is putting forth some certain arguments which I do believe may have been debated in the party, at least among the MPs. And some of them are pretty valid, then why did they not vote against the bill? That option was available, that option is legal, that option is constitutional, and it ought to have been exercised. So there is politicking, there is hypocrisy in what Mr. Satyam has said about when he explained his party's position. And I mean, this is not what one expects from the opposition, and technically the AIDMK is an opposition party. It's not a part of NDA, So what prevented them from, pressing the no button like Mr. Owaisi's party did?
Absolutely. Same question to Adil Singh Boparai of the Congress party. Adil, we heard very eloquent arguments from the members of the Congress party. Could you tell us how many of them finally at the end of the day voted no yesterday in Lok Sabha? And how many voted yes?
Well, Faye, I'll again repeat, principally, we are supportive of reservation for the economically weaker sections of society.
So you support
But I tend
this
to
bill?
agree with all the panelists that it is time in this country today to increase the share of the pie. It's important that we ensure opportunities
you
exist
support
in
the
this
fact
country.
that you
To come
support
out
every
with a
part of the
policy,
bill.
to come
Why are
out
you
with a
arguing with
reservation
it then?
scheme where there are no
Why don't
jobs
you applaud
is
the
a
government
no-brainer.
for
It is
bringing a
nothing
bill
but a fraud
that
on the
you
people of
support?
this country.
Then applaud the government for bringing a bill that you support. Because you support the bill, you voted for it.
Well, we support policies, but the government must see it through. And I have serious doubts if this government will be able to see it through, because their intention seems to be insincere and they don't have the requisite information, the requisite data to really ensure that this passes legal muster.
So you're
And
calling
lastly,
a
and this
political
is the most
bluff
critical
in
point,
Parliament
like I
then?
said earlier, there are no jobs. The economy is in the doldrums.
Has your party issued a whip to all members of Parliament
repeat
to
your
come to
question?
Parliament and vote for this bill?
No, because we do support the idea.
So you support the bill.
principle.
So I think
But as far as the
effectively,
bill is
Zafar
concerned
Islam,
and
the
whether there
Congress is
requisite
applauding the
data
government for
is an
bringing a
issue.
bill that no member of the opposition could refute. I believe the Congress should be applauding the government at this point.
My question is also pending with Jafar Islam for the past 10 minutes
This
regarding
is nothing
creation
but a jumla
of
by
jobs
Mr.
in the
Modi.
private
In 2014,
sector.
he came out with the 2 crore job jumla, the 15 lakh deposit jumla. Now, this seems to be another jumla in the run-up to the 2019 election.
Then why did you vote for the jumla, Mr. Singh?
And yet you supported.
The
We are
Congress has put
supportive
itself
of
in
the
an
principle.
I
untenable
think he
position
has
at
no
this
answer.
point.
Nation is
To be
concerned.
arguing
Let's
jumla
appear
tonight
to be
after you
political.
voted yesterday.
Faye,
Zafar Islam, unless you're going to tell me the answers of how
The
many
proof of
people
the
fall in
pudding
this
lies-
category
lies in
and
the
what you're going to do
implementation
in
of the
states
scheme.
where the categories and the reservations have already crossed 50%. So will Tamil Nadu have a total reservation of 79%? Is that what we're talking about? How many candidates will apply for these 10% jobs in colleges, both private and public, and in government offices? Do you have the numbers and do you have the data, Zafar Islam?
no, well, I don't have the exact numbers.
Does anybody
how
in the
many
government have the
students
exact
will apply,
numbers, and
but
why
let me
is the
tell-
government not willing to
but let
share
me
those
tell you-
numbers? Is it because you think
No,
it will put you in a difficult
let me
position
tell
in
you.
court?
This actually vindicates our position. This is a gimmick.
No, let me tell you that the additional 10%, which has already been stated by the government, the additional 10% capacity will be created in educational government-owned educational
whom?
institution.
By
at
the
least
next government after
and
the election?
private institutions which is recognized by CBSE.
Who's going to create this capacity?
Sorry?
Who will create this capacity? The next government. Your term is over.
See, we definitely we can speak for ourselves. We cannot speak for the other government. It is our determination that even though we are giving reservation, but the remaining 40% should not feel that they will not get actually we are taking out of
Zafar,
their
you failed on
pie.
every parameter.
So government has also intended to create more capacity in the government institutions as well educational institutions as well as in terms of number of seats. Like for medical seats,
doing
has already
politically
been
expedient
increased.
things and
The
expecting the
medical
courts
seats,
to do
the number of
right
medical
thing.
seats
I think it's just
has been
so wrong.
significantly increased.
Yes, Karunanandi's very good point that our parliamentarians are collectively doing something irresponsible, and each and every one of them know it, and they're doing it for selfish reasons of electoral gains. None of them want to be on the wrong side of this decision, so they've all voted for. As when they continue to call it a jumla, how dare you? How dare you sit in the opposition and call this a jumla and then vote yes? Do you think that the voters and the citizens of this country are not going to know the difference?
But the main responsibility is of the government to act constitutionally, which they have failed to do. I mean, of course, the Congress's actions, I think, are just sheer hypocrisy, as well as the rest of the opposition. But at the first instance, why does the government continually fail to act constitutionally and then say that our courts do not have democratic legitimacy when our courts step in and take the decisions that are constitutional?
Yes.
While they are trying to pander to things that appear to be popular, while there are people unemployed and starving, on the streets, and there's agrarian distress, there is the level of unemployment and urban distress that we haven't seen in a long, long time.
Right, I have to wrap up this discussion here because I've run out of time. I want to thank my panel, but as you can see, there's table thumping happening in Parliament. They all seem to understand each other, but this is where we are. The questions that we asked, we didn't get answers to too many of them. My first question was, what is the purpose of this bill? What problem are we solving for? Zafar Islam said, people feel this is a long-standing demand that they want affirmative action because they feel they can't climb up the ladder. Now, no part of our constitution actually allows for a breakdown of the fundamental right to equality because you feel like you don't have enough opportunities. They know, the government knows that this will not stand the test of scrutiny in a court of law. We didn't get answers to how many seats are available, how many jobs are available. We didn't get answers to how many candidates will apply for those jobs. We didn't get answers to what happens in states that already have more than 50% reservation. What is worse is that while the government has placed before Parliament and pushed through Parliament a bill that it knows very, very well, and all of its legal officers would have told it very clearly, cannot stand the test of the court. It will be thrown out in court because it's unconstitutional. They've gone ahead and done so anyway. What is worse is that every member of the opposition, barring 4 people in Lok Sabha yesterday, allowed for this to happen. They pressed yes when they thought no because they're being selfish, and they are amending our constitution, our fundamental rights. They're amending our constitution in 2 days without proper discussion, without satisfactory answers, because every person who voted yes put their electoral gains ahead of what is good for us and what is good for the country. They failed to do the basic job, the promise that they make when they enter that room. They failed to do so. As citizens of this country, we need to realize that. And when we go to the polls in 4 months' time, we need to keep that in mind when we vote for these very same people who traded our freedoms and our equality for electoral gains today. Thanks for watching.